When you were writing the book, it's 101 careers. Were there any that surprised you or that you hadn't even really known that much about?
Yeah, that's true. There were, and I was talking with Nancy Hale, the acquisitions editor. There are some careers in that book that you might say, well, these are a job, not a career. Now, we might argue the difference between those,
Yeah.
but one of the more interesting ones that you'll hear a lot about in a few years is genetic counseling, and it's kind of a combination of counseling, the traditional counseling training, as well as that within the STEM fields of science and technology.
Yeah.
So it's really an interesting marriage, which means you've got to have both sets of skills. There is one you'll hear a lot about in the future, for example, one that's going to grow considerably.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Very
yeah.
science fiction almost.
Well, it's almost, but in terms of advising people about future diseases they might get, or parents about issues they need to be aware of, and so forth, it's a very credible field. You'll find genetic counselors working in a lot of hospitals and medical centers.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And I know, the book has just come out, but how has the reception been so far?
Interesting. I got a fellow out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, who somehow heard of it and wanted to interview. I've had people write and ask me about it. A number of people who wrote, there were a number of different spotlights on different counseling fields written by colleagues in the field. And so the word has gotten out and people have asked me about it. And because it's been advertised before it was published, so I've had a lot of people asking me, what's in there? What's in there that I don't know about?
Yeah.
And so part of it is just educating them on the different variations in the field. Because if you sit down with people, I bet if you polled the average counselor, she or he would say, well, you got 5, 6, 8 different types of generally of counseling. And 101? What's that? How do you get to 101?
So kind of what key, I guess, ideas or messages would you want a reader, after finishing the book, what would you really want them to get out of the book?
You have got to get out of the book that 2 things are critical for your success. Number 1, you have got to be able to work with people who are different than you are.
Yeah.
Visibly different culturally, sexually, ethnically, religiously, geographically, and so forth. Because if you cannot do that, you cannot be successful. So multiculturalism and the affirmation thereof, and the ability to work across lines.
Yeah.
That's one. Number 2, in this global market, and one of the most influential books I've read in the last decade was Thomas Friedman's The World is Flat. I recommend it to anybody, where.
Yeah.
And our counseling world is flat. We're in a global environment, and that will be more so in 6 to 10 years. So the other part of that is, in addition to cultural competence, which is always big, because of the internet and the way that's driven the global economy, people who are in our field in counseling or counselor educators, you may be working overseas. And your willingness to be able to do that, or to be able to form partnerships overseas and work that way, either through the internet or going and working part-time in a different country and society, are going to be pretty critical to your own, I wouldn't say survival, but to your own success. I would say both of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.